are. And so good morning, everybody. We are at 9:02. We are recording. Hopefully you got that message that says we are recording this. I am Carmen Bingham, and I thank you so much. The big boss is coming in. I thank you so much for being here this morning, especially on a Monday morning, the first work day after time change. I don't know about you all, but that always kind of throws me off. Although so much better to fall back than to have to spring ahead. So I gain my hour back. I am Carmen Bingham. I am the Affordable Clean Energy Program Coordinator for VPLC. That's a fancy way of saying that I basically work on utility issues and policy for VPLC, specifically from the consumer point of view and our low-income consumers. Prior to, the reason why I'm doing this though, is prior to my life here at VPLC, which is far more exciting for me, was a very exciting, dull, but exciting moment, stressful, I should say, not exciting, life that I led as a legislative aide for two very nice gentlemen, delegates from two very different areas of the state. I worked for Albert Pollard, if any of you remember, early 2000 state legislature. Albert Pollard, he was the youngest member of the General Assembly when he came in at the ripe young age of 32. And he represented the Northern Neck region. And I was with him for a total of 11 years because he left and came back. And then from there, I moved to Charlottesville, where my parents lived, still live, my mother still lives, to work for David Toscano. And I worked for David for his entire tenure as the House Minority Leader or House Democratic Leader in the House of Delegates. So I've been around the General Assembly far too long. I try not to go over there as much as I can, although Dana, who I work for, drags me along. Just for companionship, I think sometimes, and other times because we do a very good cop, bad cop routine, and I am always the bad cop. But Tony, I had done this quick little presentation for our advocacy team at the Virginia Poverty Law Center, and she asked if I would be willing to kind of bring this to the board, just to give some very basic 101, but also answer any questions anybody has. So I'm going to run through this. I only have 12 slides here. It's pretty basic, but I'm happy to answer questions and chat for a little bit afterwards too. So let me get started. And this is very simple. Things you need to know about the General Assembly. So again, very basic stuff. You know, we all knew this from our either junior high or high school government or social studies classes. There's the three basic branches of the Virginia state government, and that's your legislative branch, your General Assembly, 100 House of Delegates, 40 senators. Then you have your executive branch, which is your governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general, and the state agencies are all under the purview of the executive branch. And then you have the judicial branch, which is all of your more of what our attorneys obviously are familiar with. Beyond that, we also have a quasi independent agency called the State Corporation Commission. And this is where I spend a lot of my time. They don't play too much into the legislative side, except for that the legislature actually tells the State Corporation Commission what the parameters are of the work that they have to do. The State Corporation Commission is part of our Constitution. They are created by the Constitution, and that is where we do the utility regulation, financial institutions, and insurance. Those are the three different areas that the state corporation works on. What they do is set up the rules to regulate those industries that need regulation, that our laws set up and say you have to do this. Some of it is guided by federal law, but then the states also have individual purview over the details of those, of how that's done within each state. And then just a quick reminder, or maybe if you didn't know, Virginia is what is called a Dillon Rule state. And what that means is that local governments in Virginia, our localities, our counties, our cities, and our towns, only have powers that are expressly granted to them, very, very expressly granted to them by the Virginia General Assembly. So this is not a seek forgiveness state. This is you have to ask permission in order to do anything at the local level. So if you want to institute a new tax that you have not actually been granted the power to institute, you have to ask the General Assembly to enact a law that says that, yes, you can do that. So it's pretty simple. It's all basically top down, which is a little weird, but it is the way that Virginia runs. And then just a quick background on how a bill actually becomes a law in Virginia. And again, very basic stuff. So delegates and senators each present their own bills within their own chambers. It goes through the committee process in both chambers. There's a set of committees that are designated within each chamber. The speaker in the House of Delegates designates who is a member of the committee, of each committee. He assigns the members to the committees, and he also assigns the bills to the committee. So there is some guidance there that's provided within the rules as to where those bills will go, but the speaker can send a bill to any committee he wants to, and the speaker could also not send a bill to a committee. So the speaker has a lot of power in the House of Delegates and actually in the entire General Assembly. In the Senate side, it's all done by the clerk. The clerk of the Senate right now is Susan Clark Shar. She's been there for several years, very nice lady, but she runs in terms of the bills, she runs where they go, and they have a very specific set of rules based on the section of the code that it is affecting as to what committee it goes to. In the Senate, the rules are different in that the House or the Senate majority leader picks their committee members and the Republicans pick their committee members. So the Republican leader picks their committee members, and they agree as to who's going to be sitting on those committees together. And the majority party always has a chair. So the Senate leader determines who's going to be the chair of those committees. They go through this process, the committee process. If it passes the committee, it comes out to the House floor or the Senate floor, and then it's voted on the floor. If the respective chamber passes that bill, then what it does is we refer to it as it crosses over to the other chamber, and it goes through the same process in the opposite chamber. And then once they go through both chambers, the bill then is signed by the president of the Senate, signed by the Speaker of the House, and sent to the governor for signage. And once it's signed, it's passed. Now, that's a very short description of the process, but there are some very specific details on what needs to happen during all of this and what does happen during all of this. So when a bill crosses the chamber and it's heard through the committee process, each side, each committee, and each step that bill goes through, and a bill can go through more than one committee, it just depends upon the bill, it can have amendments attached to it from either chamber. It doesn't matter where that bill originated. And so when another chamber adds an amendment to another chamber's bill, it has to go back through the approval process on the House, on the other chamber side. And if that other chamber does not like those amendments, they reject those amendments and send it back to the other chamber in order to see if that other chamber will accept the bill as it was sent to them, or if the other chamber will insist upon their amendments. And if the other chamber insists upon their amendments, that's when a bill will go into what we call conference. And if you've ever been around the General Assembly, you understand towards the end, those last couple of weeks usually is when bills get sent into conference. And it's usually the last 2 or 3 days where there are these just conference going on. And the last couple of days up floor is last minute conference reports is what they're referred to, coming to the floor for approval by both chambers. Conferences are determined basically, again, if the 2 chambers don't agree on the amendments to the bill, but they like the bill, and the conferees are selected again by the Senate majority leader, the Senate minority leader, and the speaker, and they decide who's going to be on it. And to be honest with you, a lot of times the patron of the bill will ask for specific people to be part of that conference. You can also have special interests who do not like the bill or who do support the bill ask for specific members, their allies, to be appointed as conferees, and ask them to actually advocate for themselves to be conferees so that they can get whatever amendments or changes to the bill or just no amendments, and have the bill die. So there's a lot of horse trading that goes on in that conference period. And again, usually it's the last 2 weeks of session and definitely the last couple of days when a lot of that is happening. A lot of horse trading and deals and exchanges are made throughout the process itself, but that is politics, right? That's what we refer to as the sausage making. It happens along the way. It happens in the committee. It happens in between committee. But there is a good amount of work that's done outside of the committee meetings and outside of the floor debates to get the bill in a presentable position or an unpresentable position if somebody is trying to kill the bill. So it's not all what you'll hear. A lot of what happens in subcommittee and committee, that is more of an indication of what the conversations have been outside of that process in order to make sure that the bill either passes or doesn't pass. And there are several ways of killing a bill. There are several procedural motions to kill a bill. There are several ways to have the bill just die on process. And they're all parliamentary procedures. There's things like laying the bill on the table. There are things like passing by the bill indefinitely. These are just ways to say, we don't like the idea of that bill, or that bill's not ready for prime time, and we have too many questions that need that bill to be available for passage to get through both chambers, and so more work needs to be done. And so there are just several ways that they can kill a bill, and they will do it. There is something though to note, that when a bill passes during the General Assembly, both chambers, it goes through that process and passes. During the session, if there are more than 7 days to the end of session, the governor has only 7 days to act on that bill. He either has to sign it or make amendments to it or outright veto it. And if he does nothing to that bill, that is a de facto signing of the bill. And he has to do that within 7 days if there are more than 7 days left in session. This is all in the Constitution. If, however, there are less than 7 days left in the session, then the governor has 30 days from the end of session. So whenever the General Assembly gavels sine die, he has 30 days from that point to take action on any of those bills. And again, he can sign it, he can amend it, or he can veto it. And that is what we call if the governor amends or vetoes, the General Assembly is reconvened, and many refer to it as veto day, but it's really called the reconvened session, to go over those amendments and those vetoes and determine whether or not they want to override the veto, accept or reject the amendments, or change the amendments that the governor has offered to the bills. So there is some strategy in having your bill pass both chambers early on during session, so that the governor doesn't have too much time to actually, as some of us say, muck it up, right? Like if you get a bill that's passed by both chambers early on, it's pretty safe that that's a pretty good bill and the governor wants it anyway, and that he's going to sign it. And again, even if he doesn't sign it within that 7 days, if he does absolutely nothing to that bill in that 7 days, then that bill will become law as of July 1st. All of our bills become law as of July 1st. Our fiscal year begins July 1st, ends June 30th every year. And they go into effect July 1st. So if the governor does not sign a bill within his allotted time period, that bill will go into effect in July 1st, unless, of course, there's an emergency clause or another enactment date that is written into the language of the bill. Now, like I said, there are several ways to kill a bill. The bill's not docketed. It's not assigned to a committee. It's sent by the committee to be studied either by another committee or a chair. It's laid on the table. Gently laid on the table is more of a deference to the patron to say, you know, we liked your bill, we liked your idea, but it's not ready for prime time. Pass by indefinitely is a solid pass. Like, nope, we don't like this at all. There are specific enactment clauses requirements. The Senate is notorious for putting an enactment clause that requires that it needs, if a bill needs funding, that it only goes into effect if funding is available. And then there's all sorts of things that they can do with the rules and the votes. And in the House, there's this thing, like, for example, in the House, there's this thing called the germaneness rule, and it's all at the purview. It's the speaker that gets to determine whether an amendment to a bill is germane. And there have been several arguments back and forth, and they always come up with some, let's just say this, they can twist themselves into pretzels to make something germane if necessary, or they can just outright say something's not germane. Doesn't matter. There really doesn't seem to be a lot of logic and reason to it sometimes, but if the ruling party wants to kill a bill, then there's an amendment to it. Whether it makes sense or not, the speaker could rule it ungermane, and then the bill is dead. So there are a lot of fun things that the General Assembly can do and the members can do, both in committees. These are parliamentary motions that can be made in committee and also on the House floor. Just to give everybody an idea, this is the list of the current VIPs in the House of Delegates. You have your majority leader and the chair and the whip. And then you have your minority leader, chair, and whip. And then you also have your Virginia Black Caucus chair and vice chair. These are folks that if you are inclined to be at the General Assembly, or if you want to know what's going on, or you just, are very curious as to some of the ins and outs on a specific bill, these are the people that are going to be in the know. And these are the people that actually control their party members to make sure that things are done the way that they need to be done for their parties, as well as making sure that things are not done, just to put it politely. But the speaker, as I said, is very powerful, and the speaker oversees everything that happens in the House of Delegates, and the speaker also is responsible for making sure that the collaboration between the two chambers occurs. The House is the one that sets the joint rules, and they are also the House is also the chamber that controls the final budget document. The budget is a bill in and of itself, and each chamber has their own budget bill, but at the end of the day, it's always the House bill that rules the day, and that is the one that they end up passing and goes into effect July 1st. So the House of Delegates is pretty powerful, even though it's referred to often by the Senate as the lower chamber. These are the VIP Senate. So like I said, in the Senate, it's the clerk that controls where the bills are assigned. But that having been said, the rules are very clear as to what committees are assigned what bills based on the code section that bill affects. But within the Senate, you have your president pro tem, and then you have your Senate majority leader, chair, and whip. And then you also have your minority leader, chair, and whip. The Senate is far more collegial than the House. I think more because the Senate has been far more balanced in terms of the party representation. It's usually only been a 1 or 2 member difference in the membership between the two parties, and so they've been far more collegial, at least since my day. And again, I started in 2000 at the General Assembly. It's just been far more balanced and more collegial in that chamber. It's not to say that things don't happen, but it is. The other bills, the other VIPs at the General Assembly are going to be your committee chairs and staff, and specifically the staff. So again, the committee chairs are assigned by their leadership. And the staff, however, are very important because it's the staff of those committees that actually help to set the docket. Once the bills are assigned to their committees, they help to set the docket. They help to keep the chair running the meetings in a very smooth and functional way. And the staff can sometimes offer to, it is always the responsibility of the chair, but it is the staff that can also suggest to the chair whether or not certain bills are heard on certain days. And a lot of that just has to do with timing, but also if there is a bill that is of particular importance and they know that they're going to have a lot of speakers on, or they know that they have a lot of interest in, sometimes they'll push those off for as long as they can, just because it helps to get through the rest of the docket faster, and then they can give more time to allowing those bills to be heard and have the public comment on it. And then the Division of Legislative Services, this is the group of people, attorneys and non-attorneys, who actually write the bills. So they write the laws, the proposed changes to the laws, the new laws, all of this, and they are usually the staff that is on the committee, helping the legislators run those committees and making sure that amendments are written properly, language is proper in the bills. This group of people work tirelessly from the beginning of December through the holidays, straight through the end of session. So I'm always impressed with this group of people, and with how much they handle, because they do both chamber bill or House bills and Senate bills. And at times there have been over 3,000 bills during a very short session even. So my hat always goes off to the Legislative Services team, because they are dealing with a wide range of topics, a lot of different personalities, and a lot of stress. These are the dates for session. So session always begins the second Wednesday of January by Constitution, and then it runs either 60 days or 45 days, traditionally 45 days or 46 days rather, to depending upon the year. Odd numbered years are the shorter session. Even number years are the longer session. And the reason for that is because we operate on a 2-year budget. And so the even number years is when we deal with a new budget. And odd number years, you will hear about the budget bill, but it's what we refer to as a caboose bill, and it's only to fix the next year's bill budget numbers. We'll get new revenue reports. We'll get some new revenue forecasts. We know where money's coming from. We might get some new sources of revenue. If we get some new federal dollars, that sort of thing. We need new programs started. Those are the kind of things that we look at in the budget bill for the second year, in that odd numbered year, that shorter year. But you're not dealing with a whole new budget. Even number years, you're dealing with a whole new budget. So this year is going to be 2023, odd number. It's going to be a short session. It will likely be 46 days again. So that means we will end on February 25th. When we count days for the General Assembly, we count weekends. The General Assembly, the Speaker can call the General Assembly into session on a Saturday and Sunday. They don't technically get those days off. So they are working around the clock, 24/7, around the clock during General Assembly. Now, there are some key dates associated with this prior to the start of the General Assembly. That's the pre-filed draft request deadline. And I always have to remind people, this is the draft request. So your bills don't have to be completed, but you have to have all draft requests in by December 1st by 5 p.m. into Legislative Services. That holds a place for you for a pre-filed bill. Again, Legislative Services works tirelessly through the holidays. They always have until midnight, either December 31st, or in this case this year, because of the way the calendar lies, it's midnight on December 30th. Those draft requests are back to the members by January 6th, And then they have a week before session starts, basically, or not even a week, 5 days before session starts to get their bills basically in order for pre-filing deadline, which is 10 a.m. on the first day of session. Now, there is a difference between pre-filed bills and non-pre-filed bills. Pre-filed bills usually don't have a limit in terms of the number of those bills that you can submit, except during odd number years, there is a limit to the number of bills in the House of Delegates. And again, for the first time, there's going to be a limit in the Senate for odd numbered years, because they get too many bills and they don't have time to actually properly go through them. And so we need to make sure that they are done in a timely manner. So they have until 10 a.m. to file those pre-filed bills. After that, they can have up to 5 more bills that they can submit for the rest of the session, but those have to be requested by 5 o'clock that first Friday of session. And then the next week is when everything will be filed and submitted, so that we know all the bills that will be before the General Assembly by that second Friday of session every year. Now, there is an exception to that, in that the governor can actually send down a bill anytime, but the member has to be able to have an open slot available. So in other words, he could never reach their maximum number of bills filed for that year. And I can explain that more in detail. There is the budget process. The budget process is pretty standard, and it's the same every year. Again, the budget is a bill just like any other bill. It goes through the same process. It has its committees and its subcommittee that it goes through. And then it gets, it goes into what is called a conference report afterwards, when the chambers pass their bills to each other, and they come up with a conference report that has all of the amendments to the bill that they're going to add. And then each chamber votes on those conference reports. The budget staff is assigned by section of the budget and by area. So you have Anne, who's overall general. Susan Massart does all of the Medicaid and healthcare, any healthcare issues. Tony Maggio is all capital and higher education. Jay, I believe, is VRS. And then these other folks pick up, you can see all of these other things that these folks pick up based on the budget. The Senate Finance has the same thing. They have their own staff that does it by section also. And again, they go through, it's a budget bill just like any other, it's a bill just like any other bill, goes through the committees, goes through Finance Committee, and they come up with their version of the budget. So it's pretty, oops, there we go. That's it. That was a lot with a lot of information, and I am happy to share this slideshow with you, so you have all of those names and contact information. And I know that we're up on the hour, but we did start a couple minutes late, and so I want to just give a moment to does anybody have any questions? Is there more information that you'd like to know? I can give out some trade secrets, but not all.
Thank you, Carmen. And actually, you said 30 minutes and you'd worked 30 minutes. That's pretty amazing. But we budgeted this until 9:45. And so we have a couple minutes for questions if you are available.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Would you be able to just say, and either Carmen or Jay, could you give just a few minutes to explain now what VPLC does as all of this is going on during session?
Jay, do you want to take that? Yeah, there you go.
So it's offense and defense. And so we have our own bills that we ask patrons to put in. And so if we ask the patron to put it in, we'll probably draft it for him or her. Then we'll have to deal with looking at it again after legislative services and then following it through the whole session. And that's an enormous amount of work when you're on offense, because you got to watch every little thing and talk to everybody. And it's a huge undertaking. Then there's things that you defend against. And so we all spend a lot of time looking at all the bills. They tend to drop all the bills on about 2 different days. So you can be looking at as many as 1,500, 2,000 bills. And you're just sort of looking through the lists and trying to figure out what in the world this legislator is trying to do. And we all look at our own area. So I don't look at all the bills. I look at the bills that affect the consumer, and Carmen looks at stuff on utilities, et cetera. And then if you find something that you dislike, then there's a mad rush to figure out how you might be able to change it or get rid of it or whatever. If you might like it, then you might want to support it and all that sort of thing. Is that what you're looking for?
Yep. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Only Jay really underscores the amount of work that's done, because even when you're playing offense, in other words, you have your own bill, you're trying to get it passed, which means that you're talking to various members of the legislature, committee members, people that support the bill, people that don't support the bill, and why they wouldn't support the bill. You're trying to figure out ways to make that bill palatable and yet still do what you intended it for it to do throughout that entire process. So you're also trying to work with people who don't want that bill in the form that it's in, which means that you're kind of playing a little bit of defense to make sure that the bill is not going to get killed, like gently laid on the table or PBI'd in committee or on the floor. And so when he says it's a lot of work, he's not kidding. It's a full, 2.5 person job for every one of us that's there at the General Assembly working on our bills or working against bills that we don't like.
And the other thing that maybe wasn't clear from what Carmen said is that every bill changes a lot. Mm-hmm. Not only during the drafting process, but after it's been introduced, every single bill gets changed. And see, people often wonder why is the code written so badly? It's because all these cooks in the kitchen, everybody's got their own way of wording things, and sometimes you just put stuff in there to accommodate somebody. There's a lot of bills that pass that do nothing. It's a lot of words, it does nothing, but it saves face for somebody. So anyway, Carmen, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I know some legislators from back in the day that literally would put in bills, and actually there's one of them still remaining that puts in bills that do absolutely nothing but reiterate what's already law. And so it's, at the end of the day, it just becomes something that just restates what's already currently law. But because of the politics and what goes on there, it, the way it got changed and worded, it just basically said the same thing that was already there, just in, slightly different language.
So we have 13 people lobbying this year. 1 male and 12 female. So this would be by far our best team, I think. But we all work on our own different areas, but we also work together a lot. We talk to each other a lot and work together on different bills. And so that is
the hard thing, is because we do so many different areas, and we are known at the General Assembly. The thing that I've loved has been going over to the General Assembly, talking to some of my colleagues from over there, and they know I'm working on utility issues, but inevitably somebody's going to ask me, okay, so tell me about that housing bill you all have. And I'm like, that's not my bill. But what do you need to know? And, so they will always ask, okay, well, you're with VPLC. You know what this healthcare bill does. No, actually, I don't. But let me let you talk to Sarah or Deepak, who do know what that bill is. And they are constantly doing that to us over there, which on the one hand is great, because I love the fact that they know VPLC. They know who we are. They know us as individuals. and they know we all represent this organization. But we can, our bills are so complicated. The issues that we deal with are so complicated. The changes to the bills that get made constantly are not something that we as individuals can keep up with on all of our bills because of the wide range of issues. So we do, like Jay said, we have to be in constant communication with each other throughout the General Assembly. And, it's just important for us to keep those lines open, and to also help legislators understand that, that's a very complicated issue. I'm not really exactly sure where the negotiations are right now, but I can make sure that somebody will get to you this day, or if it's late at night, first thing in the morning, to make sure you understand and answer your questions.
That's super helpful. Thank you, guys.
Does anybody else have any other questions? And no question is too small or too silly.
No questions. I just wanted to say thank you. I really enjoyed that.
Sure. Absolutely. And of course, if anybody has questions too, or you think of something later on, feel free to email me, or my phone number is in my signature, because I'm always happy to answer. And we will. I know Tony does, or not Tony. I'm sorry. Who's doing the action alerts now? We have action alerts that get sent out on our bills. I don't know. Remember
Connie will.
Connie will. Okay. Connie Stevens. We will have people who are bills that we will need support from the public on. A lot of what we do is it's so policy oriented. It's very high level. It's not like a lot. It affects people, but it's not something that is easy to bring down into a simple bumper sticker message, right, for people. And so we'll send out action alerts on bills that we know people can say, hey, pick up the phone and call your legislator and say, we really need this change. But there aren't a lot of them that we do that for, except for in the housing. Sometimes on the utility stuff, we might do it, but for the most part, it's, if we do need help from the board, to be able to pick up the phone and call a couple of friends to say, hey, if you have legislative friends, or friends who are friends of legislators, to just give that side call to say, look, I'm supporting VPLC. They have this bill. We really need you to pass this bill, or, lend some support to it, or give it a positive nod in any way that they can. And you'd be surprised what little bit of nudging can do to a legislator when they hear from their own friends and constituents on a bill.
Carmen, I really liked your slides. You're going to send them to all of us?
Yes. Yep. I will have Tony send them to everybody. Yep.
Thank you.
I have one other question. If nobody else, now I'm using my relative power to take up all the oxygen in the room.
Go right ahead.
The question about you mentioned the various parliamentarian tricks to get rid of to kill a bill, right? Laying it on the table, or are those ever reversed, or is any advocacy you're doing like in the rumors that it's going to happen up until that point?
Yeah, so a bill can be laid on the table and picked back up. If it's PBI'd, no. If it's passed by indefinitely, no. But if it is laid on the table, it can be picked back up. It takes a lot of political will. Now I have seen in the past, there was one time I remember when I was working for Albert Pollard, he was on the now defunct Militia, Police, and Public Safety Committee. I think it's just now Public Safety, but that was the committee that all of the gun bills went to. So if there was any kind of gun restriction law or anything, it would go to Militia, Police, and Public Safety and be killed, right? This was Republican rule. And he sat on that committee because he got appointed to that committee. And there was a bill that was laid on the table there. And the speaker realized that bill was actually a request of a very big donor. And so the committee had already said, we're going to lay this bill on the table. And a lot of it was because it just wasn't ready for prime time. There were some nuances that hadn't been worked out in the policy. And the speaker realized, oh my God, he got a phone call from a friend who said, hey, did you know that so-and-so, who gives a lot of money, asked for that bill? And he was like, I had no idea. So the speaker said to his leader, I need you to bring that bill back up. It was laid on the table by the committee. And so they did on the House floor, that somebody made a motion to bring that bill up, and they, it takes a majority vote. That's all it is. They brought it back up, they sent it back to the committee, and the committee worked the bill and got it back in proper form and brought it through and got it past the House. It got killed in the Senate, but got passed in the House. So it can be done, but only if the bill's been laid on the table. If the bill's been PBI'd, there's no movement there. But a laying on the table, laying gently on the table, it can be brought back up.
And is there any limit to a substantially similar bill being introduced the next session?
No.
If it's been, no, so you could just re-enter it as many times as.
Oh, yeah. Vivian Watts has had the same bill on
The ERA?
I think it's nursing homes, right?
Oh, nursing
Not on
homes.
yeah, nursing homes. And this woman has been in the House of Delegates since the 70s. She has had the same bill introduced every year. And she just does it every year. She knows it's going to get killed, but she brings it up every year. There used to be a gentleman who was new in the early 2000s. For the 4 years he was in office, brought a bill up, and it was actually a bill to, this was it was a bill to provide protection to gays and lesbians. So this was pre-LGBTQ plus, but just gays and lesbians. And for the 4 terms he was in, he brought that bill up every year, and it always got killed in committee. So yeah,
that reminds me, there's another thing that you might see that might seem confusing is sometimes they put the same bill in on the House and the Senate side. And it's just sort of a strategy thing. If it gets killed on one side, then it might pass the other side. It's sort of like a second bite at the apple type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's good strategy, sometimes it's bad strategy, but that's what they're up to.
And sometimes it's just a popular bill too. Like if this bill's going to pass, it's something everybody can jump on, then it's a great idea to put it in both chambers so that everybody's looked at it already. And when it crosses over, everybody goes, okay, we already know this bill. We're done. We're good. We don't have to worry about it. You just pass it and it's done. So yeah, there's a lot of things. Oh, and one thing you will see happen too, you won't see it this year, but in even number years, because that is the first year of the biennium, you will see committees say that we're going to continue this bill until next year. Because again, we're on a 2-year cycle, so because of the budget. And so between even number years and odd number years, what'll happen is the committees could say, okay, we're going to continue this bill until next year. And in the interim between session, the committees can meet to discuss the bills that they continued. And then they can decide whether or not they want to actually, continue that bill, have that bill continue into the next session, or just kill the bill, or suggest some changes that the patron hadn't thought of, and then, they can redo the bill and bring it up in a different form the following year. That can only happen though between the even year and the odd year, because there is no intervening election. So you will not see that happen this year because there will be an election in the fall of 2023. So that's another way to politely kill a bill, but actually gives more time for the patron to really work on that bill and figure out if it really does have merit, and if they can work out some of the sticking points on it. And I think, if anybody has any other questions, again, feel free to email me. We will send out that PowerPoint presentation today so that you have all of that information and you have those links to the contacts. But I really appreciate you all taking your time this Monday morning, the first day after the time change again. And again, always happy to answer questions and to assist in any way I can to help people get through that process, or, you know, if something sounds confusing to them as you're going through the process, to answer whatever I can on that side.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you so much. And just as a reminder, anyone who is interested in the committee will be meeting before the December board meeting, like 45 minutes before the December board meeting starts.